This is the story of a parent and their horrifying experience with their child meeting the wrong people. This is from WilliamHenryPrince.com, and you can go read it yourself if you want to know more. This is not intended to be anti-technology or anti-social media or anything like that, but it is an important story about supervision and the types of people that are out there and just a whole bunch of things that this parent had to go through and learn, and I think it's a really important thing to talk about as well. I think for some reason a lot of people think that technology is a black and white issue where you should either totally ban it from your life and your child or just completely leave them in front of it and use it for everything, when in reality it's a delicate balance where you have to figure out what is best for you as a parent. I'm going to be straight up reading this word for word because there's nothing else that I could add to this, and it is an important story to just read in full. It does say on the blog to share this when you can, so this is what I am doing in my way, and you can also just share it on social media or tell other people if you think that they can do something with it. So thank you for listening, and thank you to the parent for speaking out. Jim decided to share the story of how his daughter was groomed and abducted by pedophiles in order to help other children and parents. Her mother and I divorced when Lucy was 5. Her mother has some serious health issues, so Lucy has lived with me, almost exclusively, for 6 years. We are very close, and there's a lot of love, laughter, and music in our home. She's my little princess. We live in a small rural town. It's quiet and nothing much happens. I thought it was a safe place to raise my little girl. I don't want to say what I do or where I work. I was aware of pedophiles and grooming, obviously, but I never thought it would happen to my little girl. I thought she was safe here with me. I was wrong. Looking back, I was extremely naive, which is why I'm doing this. I wish I'd been aware of the scale, method, and ferocity of online grooming. Even before Lucy left the local primary school, most of her friends had iPhones and iPads, Facebook and Snapchat. So for her 10th birthday, I brought her a second-hand phone. She loved it. It was great for me to be able to contact her no matter where she was. I thought it was a good move, safety-wise. I think we talked a little bit about online safety, but I know she had covered it as part of her lessons at school. She seemed aware of it. I thought it was too early to have a conversation about porn or any kind of stuff, because Lucy was only 11 and hadn't started puberty to any great degree. I felt she was still too young. Lucy had a close circle of friends, and she'd have sleepovers, go on shopping trips, or to the local park. She was a normal kid. In such a small town, everyone looks out for each other. I always knew where she was and who she was with. Well, I thought I did. For me, everything changed on Saturday, 10th September 2016. Lucy was having a sleepover at a friend's house, which was in the same town, less than 2 miles away. She had been there many times, and the parents were good people. I had no concerns at all. It was nice for me to have a night off. I adore my daughter, but a night and a day to myself is a rare and welcome treat. Making dinner, I was hit by a sudden impulse to ring Lucy and see how she was doing. She's a real daddy's girl, and we send a lot of messages. It was a powerful, instinctive urge which was unsettling. Her phone went straight to answer phone, which wasn't anything unusual. Signal can be patchy in rural areas. I sent a message asking if she was having fun with kisses and hearts and asked her to send me a message when she could. After dinner, I rang her friend's landline, but no answer. I remembered having a feeling that something wasn't right, but sat down, clicked on the TV, and figured I would call again in an hour. By 9, I was getting worried. It was unusual that Lucy hadn't sent me a message. I told myself they'd gone out for a meal or to the pictures or something normal. I was being irrational. The phone rang at 10:32 p.m. It was the police. They had found Lucy. She was okay but very upset. They were going to bring her home but needed to talk to me. What did they mean, found her? The doorbell rang and Lucy rushed in. She looked terrified and threw herself onto me, sobbing and shaking. I folded my arms around her and noticed the female police officer's sad smile. After Lucy calmed down, she went upstairs and crashed. She fell fast asleep. The police officer told me what happened. Lucy and her friend Kathy were abducted by a man, M, and an accomplice. We don't know exactly what happened yet, but there was a sexual element to this. Lucy managed to run away but got lost. The sexual contact seemed to have been minimal, with Lucy at least. I didn't say a word, I just stared. Kathy was 12 and Lucy's best friend. The police officer continued, "There's something else. Has Lucy told you about the Snapchat messages?" I shook my head. Apps and messages. I downloaded Snapchat for a few days, I think, but it didn't interest me. It was clearly aimed at kids. When Lucy asked me if she could download it onto her phone, I said yes. I was probably tired or just didn't think about it. Reading the messages that night was terrible. They started off light and vague, but it didn't take long for me to see what was happening. Having taken legal advice, Jim has agreed to share edited screenshots of Snapchat messages from Lucy's phone. You can see them when you actually get to the blog itself. The police officer told me that M wasn't a child, he was an adult. Was known to the police, and it was called grooming. Lucy hadn't been in contact for long, but Kathy had been groomed for much, much longer. Kathy had given Lucy a Snapchat username to M and told her it was a really hot guy who was into her, and that she should accept his friend request and talk to him. M lives 2 miles outside of our town. I'm not going to tell you his name and address. Lucy and Kathy had gone to the local park to meet him. He talked them into going somewhere secret, an abandoned gasworks, where he tried to sexually abuse them. Lucy fought him off and started running. It was very dark. She didn't know where she was, and her phone had no signal. She saw some lights in the distance, so ran towards them. Miraculously, a police car had been driving by and spotted her near the edge of the road. Before the police officer left, she asked if I wanted to press charges against M. I said yes without a moment's hesitation. The guilt was almost overwhelming. Why hadn't I known? Why did I let her have Snapchat? What the hell had I done? I crucified myself. We were so close, and I thought she told me everything. Why hadn't she told me about M? Those feelings quickly gave way to blind rage. It's hard to express the level of anger I felt towards these men, but I'll come back to that. When I stopped at her door that night, her sleep wasn't peaceful. Her hands were clenched into fists and she was grinding her teeth. I'll never forgive those men for the anguish they put on her face. Police. 2 days later, we were visited by specially trained CID officers and a woman from social services. I cooperated fully with everyone and let Lucy give a statement. I also agreed to give the police Lucy's phone and iPad so they could go through them and retrieve any evidence. Over the past 6 months, Lucy was interviewed 7 times. Not about the abduction, but other events and abuses that she had witnessed. Once she spent over an hour giving video evidence, while I sat downstairs in a specially designed house for interviewing children who were victims of abuse. She was treated really well on each occasion and offered counseling and support. At first it was hard to convince Lucy to tell the truth, not because she is dishonest, but because she had been groomed. Everyone, myself included, became the enemy. She wanted to protect both Kathy and M. He's nice, Dad. He's not doing anything wrong. I don't know where I found the patience to reason with her. My instinct was to shake her and scream, "Don't be stupid, he wants to hurt you," but she was 11. She had been groomed and couldn't see that. We talked a lot and I explained that I wouldn't betray her. I told her she could tell me anything, and that I'd only tell the police what she agreed I could. This wasn't 100% true. I would email the CID officer if she told me anything that I felt needed to be shared. The officer would tell Lucy that she found it from somewhere else. I felt bad about that, but I could do it again in a heartbeat. The police were really good with Lucy. They weren't patronizing and they listened to her, but the whole thing caused her a lot of internal conflict and pain. She was torn between protecting her best friend and her groomer, while not wanting to lie to me or the police. It was really tough on her. She would alternate between silence, denial, anger, and sobbing. Charges. M was charged with child abduction and offences under Sections 14 and 15 of the Sexual Offenders Act 2003, and released on bail. I wanted him imprisoned, but that's not how the law works. His initial bail conditions included him having no contact with Lucy by any means, but he contacted her via email and her Xbox, so the police were able to place further restrictions on him. He wasn't allowed within the limits of the town unless he had a specific reason to be driving through it. The limits of the town were defined by a 30-mile-per-hour speed sign. Despite being arrested, charged, and on bail, it was very clear that the groomer was not going to stop. This is really important to understand. They will not let your child go no matter what. With that realization, I was absolutely determined to make it as tough as possible for M to get to my daughter. I resigned as manager for work and cut my hours down so that I could spend more time with her. She really clearly needed me. It also meant that I could wait for Lucy's bus to come in. Often there would be a police car there as well. I walked her to the bus stop in the morning and was in daily contact with her at school. She was not allowed to access any device that could be linked to the internet, including her Xbox and Nintendo 3DS. Her world was severely restricted and she was not happy, but I felt I had to do it. She was not allowed to go anywhere without me, or have any sleepovers. I felt sorry for her, but I just couldn't risk it. The one occasion that I let her go to a friend's house for tea, Lucy messaged M using her friend's phone. I have a small network of local friends who would help me. If they saw M in town, they would ring me and I would call the police. This may seem OTT, but as far as I was concerned, myself and the pedophile were at war. M broke his bail conditions regularly, but the police found it impossible to catch him. You see, he was not working alone. He had people who would drive him to meet Kathy, and then act as lookouts, texting them if they saw me or the police around. Kathy was in love and in a relationship with M, Lucy told me. And of course, Kathy refused to give statements to the police, cooperate with social services, or surrender her phones. Social services. As a result of being groomed and abducted, Lucy was placed on the Child Protection Register. She was considered to be at a high risk of sexual exploitation. It's hard to describe the trauma of sitting in a room with social services, a school welfare officer, a CID officer, a nurse, and an adjudicator, while they all described the severe risk they felt my daughter faced. I considered myself a total failure. I couldn't protect my own child. They talked about bi-weekly home visits, about access to her room, about therapists, sexualized behavior, counselors, strategies, teams, psychologists. They talked about weight loss and about the cuts to her arms and legs. My little girl had started to self-harm. There were deep, dark cuts on her arm that must have really hurt. I could not believe I hadn't seen them. Some of them were very fresh. Others had started to heal. She had hidden them under the long sleeves of her school jumper and pajamas. I asked what she used, and she said the ring pull-offs of Coke cans. Then I asked her why she did it, and she didn't know. Kids don't always know why they do things. The social workers and police suggested that I search her room and remove anything from the house that could be used to hurt herself. I wept when I searched Lucy's room for hidden phones and razor blades, and I locked all the sharp objects and medicines in the steel box. I couldn't believe this was happening. Lucy's behavior suffered greatly. She had over 50 detentions in her first 2 terms at high school. She spent more time in detention than in class. She was disruptive, defiant, devious, withdrawn, rude, and angry. She'd become a problem child. I kept thinking, well, yes, I'm not surprised she's angry. You'd be angry too. When I got angry, I caused the social worker concern. When I defended her, I was being naive. Most of the time I tried to appear compliant and reasonable, but that was an act. On the inside, I was in hell. If I wanted to take her out of the county to go shopping or go see her granddad, I had to ring social services so they could inform the police that an at-risk child was traveling out of the country. I had to let them know where she would be staying and who with, and provide dates of birth, addresses, phone numbers. Staying overnight without me was out of the question. I agreed to everything. My single focus was keeping her safe, so I did what was suggested. I'd have done pretty much anything to make sure she was safe. I trusted that they knew best. Lucy's initial social worker made it clear to me that if I didn't cooperate, they would get a court order to remove her into care, and that really pissed me off. I am still annoyed that she did that, but I'll get over it. Grooming and Snapchat. The grooming was initially carried out via Snapchat. It's the platform that seems most favorable by pedophiles for 2 reasons. The first is that it's mostly used by children, and the second is that some messages self-delete after a few moments of being read. That makes it very difficult for police to assess the image or text evidence. I have to say that several police officers told me that Snapchat as a company are very slow and difficult to deal with in regard to retrieving evidence. The worst part about Snapchat grooming, even worse than the sexual element, is that the way M manipulated her into thinking that he was the only one who understood and would protect her. He was her best friend, her confidant, her Superman. I was the enemy, along with friends, teachers, and especially the police. I couldn't believe the speed at which M worked on her. He took her normal insecurities that any 11-year-old girl had about her body and her looks, and used them. He complimented her, flattered her, boosted her self-esteem, gained her trust, and tried to make her fall in love, like he had with Kathy. Once he had her trust and the keys to her self-esteem, he would control her, making her feel bad if she didn't do what he wanted. It's really that simple. Lucy felt that she needed him, and that he was looking after her. I didn't realize how vulnerable she was, and it broke my heart. Reading all the messages was very painful. Sometimes a part of me would get angry at my daughter, and I thought, how can you be so bloody stupid and fall for that stuff? I mean, she was only 11. She can't always see what's going on below the surface. She trusts and believes and thinks he means it. He made her feel special and beautiful and grown up. She's a child and isn't worldly enough to cope with the level of coercion and control that M employed. Once these pedophiles have control, they can start to exploit them. They can meet them, coerce with them, get drunk, drug them, have sex with them, video them, photograph them, even sell or trade them. It's terrifying. Blackmail. Girls of Lucy's age are fiercely loyal to their friends. Friendships and their social lives are everything. It's really intense and emotional, and pedophiles know this. M and his gang would use blackmail. They would threaten to hurt Kathy if Lucy told the police, and vice versa. It is hard to break through that. These men are organized, clever, relentless. Once they have a child on the hook, they will not let her go. And it's not just girls. Boys can be groomed, abducted, and raped. They can get them via online games through PlayStation or Xboxes or cell phones and iPads as well. They will give your children phones without you knowing anything about it. I found a phone under Lucy's mattress that she had been given by one of M's gang. They are ceaseless, devious, and it's very hard to stop them. Even after I had taken everything off Lucy, they got her at school. Kathy and Lucy would hide in the toilet cubicles and M would FaceTime with them on a secret phone or iPod. They were shown how to piggyback off of someone else's Wi-Fi. The school tried to keep the girls apart, but they cannot monitor every single child. Obviously, I considered quitting my job and moving to get away from it all. For Lucy, though, leaving her school and her friends, home, everything familiar, it seemed even more traumatic. I wanted to keep her life as normal and constant as possible. There was also a sickening realization. If there were this number of pedophiles in a population of 5,000, where was it safe to move to? Rage and the thirst for vengeance. I have seen M 11 times. He has deliberately come to my workplace, presumably to try and intimidate or provoke me. I try to be peaceful, positive, and loving, but if I thought I could get away with it, I would beat him until he was dead. Fighting the rage has been a daily process for nearly a year. I have some good friends who have helped, and I've used other techniques to help me stay calm. Prayer, exercise, music. I don't drink or do drugs, but I often wish I did. There was something the CID officer once said and it stayed with me. I would want to kill him too, I've got kids, but I think it through. Who will look after Lucy while you're in prison? Because you could be charged. You would be tried and you would be imprisoned. I couldn't let that happen. I had to stay focused on being there for Lucy. I would often feel like a coward, a weak man, a failure. But to this day, I have still not hit him. A child abduction warning notice. The CPS dropped the case against M, and he was released from his bail restrictions on the 23rd of April 2017. It is very difficult to secure reliable witness statements from children who are being groomed. I'll leave it there. I have to be careful what I say. It wasn't the fault of the police. They tried everything to get him. I have nothing but admiration and respect for every officer involved. They know he's a threat, and Lucy isn't the first child he's groomed and abducted. She won't be the last. It's one thing knowing, it's another thing proving. M also had help from other men who provided alibis, gave him phones, ferried him around in the backs of their cars, and let him use their houses or flats to meet up with children. They are just as guilty as he is. Police gave me the names of 5 local men who are considered to be a threat to Lucy and other girls her age. Police monitor them, but they just can't arrest them. Having local officers on the street has definitely been instrumental to protecting my daughter. Lucy felt safer, and it made M's life more difficult. The day after the case was dropped, M was served a child abduction warning notice at my request. It means that if he approaches Lucy in any way, I can have him arrested for attempting to abduct her again. Currently, it's all I can do legally. Breaking down. I had held it together for the whole investigation, but M came to my place of work on the day that the case was dropped and smiled at me. I tried to attack him and nearly lost my job. I couldn't bear to see him smiling. I took 2 weeks off work, something I never thought I'd do. It's not in my nature to take days off or seek help, but I had to. I think I would have collapsed from the tension. The whole nightmare it just caught up with me and I couldn't cope anymore. It seemed like M had won. He was free. I swallowed both my male pride and my fear and went to see a psychologist. I had to keep it together for Lucy's sake. She needed me, so I had to deal with it. The sea of guilt, anger, shame, and everything. The time off with the psychologist helped. I was grudgingly able to talk through and get some perspective on things. I'm not ashamed to say that after each session on my own, I sobbed like a child. He hadn't won, and he wasn't free. He was trapped in a hell of being a pedophile, and he would be caught. Not this time, but one day. He hadn't managed to get my little girl, and she would be fine. She's a tough cookie. Lucy had her own counselor, and I know she finds it useful to be able to talk about things that bother her. I'm her dad, not her friend or her therapist. There are things that she needs to talk about with other people, and I'm 100% happy with that. I'm incredibly proud of her. It's been hard for me, so I can't even begin to imagine what it's like for her. Advice. Firstly, you will have to fight to get your child back, because pedophiles will not let them go. You will have to take back the control, talk to your kids, have conversations about grooming, get it out in the open. It's dark and it's horrible, yes, but it's real and it needs to be talked about. Check their phones, get access, passwords, usernames. Sod the tantrums and outrage. You might think it's intrusive or over the top, but the alternative is far worse. Keep up to date, because they can change passwords and usernames like socks. They will often have more than one account, whether it's Snapchat, Instagram, or YouTube. Don't be fobbed off. If they are being groomed, they will be devious. Observe them while they are texting. Look for anything unusual. Trust your instincts. With Snapchat or any social media sites, check their contacts and don't be fooled. Groomers will pose as children of both sexes. They will have childish names like Watermelon66, Bay, and Daisy Love. Find out who they are. Are these contacts and friends actually people she knows in real life? Get details and check the stuff out. No teacher will ever accept or send friend requests to pupils. Why is your child chatting on WhatsApp or sharing pictures on Instagram with a man who works at the local supermarket? Question things. If your child is being controlled by pedophiles, you will have to be clever and thorough. Here's an example. Lucy asked me this morning if she could go out to the park and meet up with two friends, Alicia and Mary. I said okay, and we arranged a time she needed to be back, and I checked she had credit on her phone. I also immediately logged into a Snapchat account without her knowledge or permission and checked her messages. It was clear that she was meeting up with her friends, which was good. Had she sent messages that didn't fit with what she had told me, I would have stopped the whole event. I am not interested in snooping or worrying that they may swear or talk about boys. I just need to be sure that she's not being groomed. Do I feel good about it? No. Will I keep doing it? Yes. I know the girls she's meeting up with. I make sure I know the parents' numbers and the girls' numbers. When kids are being groomed, they will lie, hide things, and you will know absolutely nothing about it. You have to get involved, be proactive and strict. If Lucy changes a password, I will know when her phone will be taken away. Don't make assumptions about pedophiles and grooming. You do not know what they are like. They are not stereotypes, and they will often not be strangers. They can be good-looking, affable 19-year-olds that your kids know. They are not middle-aged men. Pedophile rings have scouts. These scouts are older kids that help them catch fresh meat. That fresh meat is your child. Your happy and innocent kid can be upstairs right now, making and posting videos or vlogs or musicallys or YouTube stuff. There's nothing wrong with that, but get them to show it to you. Make it a positive, fun thing. They can be surprisingly enjoyable. Just keep an eye on it, because pedophiles will scrutinize these videos for both masturbatory pleasure or to see if there are jumpers, shirts, or blazers with school logos on it. They'll get a school, they get a location. They get a location, they can scout, hook, and take. They want personal information. Can you see any geographical landmarks in the background through the window? Are there books on their desks with their names on it? Lucy knew M. He hung around the skate park. That's why she trusted him. Lucy knew about staying away from strangers. She knew not to accept friend requests from people she didn't know. M was a face she was vaguely familiar with. He was just around. He waited in the shadows until she was the right age for him. You see, they have preferences. Blonde, blue-eyed 8-year-old girls, 11-year-old black or Asian girls, 5-year-old boys. My little girl was fresh meat for M. This may be obvious, but cooperate with the police. If you don't, it makes it so much easier for the pedophiles. Trust me, a case can completely collapse because the family won't cooperate. The police are not interested in your lifestyle or your past. They don't care if you smoke a bit of weed or if your house is messy. They want to stop the pedophiles. Do you know how to make sure SnapMap is set to ghost mode? I didn't even know it shared the exact location of your child. I had to become tech savvy very quickly. On Snapchat, for example, picture messages will self-delete after a few seconds. The only way to save them is to quickly take a screenshot. However, most grooming will take the form of conversations, so here's exactly how to save them. Hold your finger on the text of the conversation for a second, and an icon will appear from the left to tell you it's been saved. Again, you can take a screenshot and then send that to your phone or email. I learned how to set all of Lucy's apps so only her contacts can see what she posts, which means I check all her contacts. I link Lucy's iTunes account and her phone to mine, so I can see all her contacts in every email she sends or receives. If Lucy wants to download an app on her phone, she has to request authorization from me. I have to key in a code that she doesn't know. None of this is 100% foolproof, but it's better. It means that she knows I'm watching, and that I'm involved and that I care. Kids need, want, and like boundaries and conditions. I recently read the transcript of a police interview that Lucy had. This is one small exchange that jumped out. The police said, "Do you like living with your dad?" Lucy says, "Yeah, he looks after me and cares about me. He is strict and doesn't let me do whatever I want." The police ask, "How does it make you feel?" And Lucy says, "Safe." I still feel guilty. Every day I wish I could go back and change it. I should have been more aware of the risks of iPhones and Xboxes. I shouldn't have let her have a Facebook profile. I thought it was okay. I was busy or tired. I wanted her to have what her friends have. I wanted her to amuse herself while I did my own thing. I wanted to be a cool dad and have an easy life. I cannot change it. I can only deal with today. Hope. On the 3rd of April 2017, a new law came into effect that makes grooming a criminal offense. The official terminology is sexual communication with a child. That is fantastic news. It carries a 2-year custodial sentence. It was too late for Lucy, but it's a major step forward. Yesterday I attended another meeting with Lucy's social worker and school counselor. It was very positive. Lucy is now doing much better at school. She hasn't cut herself for a long time and the scars are now faint. She goes on sleepovers again and has an iPhone, with conditions and the knowledge and permission of her social worker. Her social worker still visits once a week, but she is cautiously happy with Lucy's progress. She might even be taken off the Child Protection Register in September, if they are happy that M and his gang are not continuing to groom her. Police, social services and schools, and a lot of local people know who M is, and he is watched like a hawk. There are other girls, other families, that are going through this. I know that for him, it's an obsession, and he will stop at nothing until he is prosecuted and locked away. I have made it as difficult as possible for M to get to my daughter, but sadly there are still problems. This afternoon, 2 of the men whose names are on the list that the police gave me were waiting at Lucy's bus stop. I got held up and was running late. They followed her to a nearby supermarket. She told a member of staff that she was afraid, and they looked after her until I arrived. I've spoken to the police, and they will try and have a squad car at the bus stop tomorrow. Following a child into a shop is of course not against the law. Nor is standing at a school bus stop and staring at a child, nor is whispering obscenities or spitting in a general direction on the street. It's just scary as hell for a 12-year-old girl. Lucy is sat on the floor in front of me now, happy and singing, doing her work. Every day that she is free of M is a victory. I hug her a lot, tell her I love her, and try to make life as normal as possible. I make sure that I'm there for her. Actions speak so much louder than words. I'm her dad and I want to protect her. I don't let her see me cry, and I don't let her see that I'm scared. I have no idea what the future holds, but today, Dad is winning. So this is all the blog says at the time that I am reading this out. There are all the just screenshots and everything else that it's important to actually view them on the blog itself to get the most information out of them, and I really recommend that you check them out. This is a pretty serious thing, especially with all that weird stuff about, people talking about how pedophilia isn't bad, and the stupid weird ring on YouTube of people who, you've heard all of them. You've seen all of these people, like Omnipolitics or whatever his name is, saying that pedophilia is okay. And then stuff like this happens. All of that together is a really big issue. Use the advice of this parent who has bravely put themselves forward to tell you the story is something that I think is really important to have. That's all from me now, and this is a very darkly toned video, but I think it was important.